Hello everyone, GuardianE here, and this is going to be a little different. It's going to be a theory crafting video, or maybe a pseudo wishlist video for Brave Camilla, Choose Your Legend Camilla's Weapon Refine. Now, most of you veterans out there know that come September is usually when we get the refines for the Choose Your Legends unit from the previous year. And so that has been the trend for the last couple of years, so we fully expect us to get a weapon refined for Brave Camilla during September. I'm very excited for that prospect, hoping that it's great, and this is going to be a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit less formal. I'm probably going to ramble a little bit and be a little bit disorganized, but I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts down, because a couple of people have asked what I was expecting for a refine, what I really wanted out of a refine. What are my priorities as far as what I would like to see out of a Brave Camilla refine? So this is going to answer some of those questions. My goal is not necessarily to be realistic, it's more to just kind of brainstorm and think about different ways that Brave Camilla's refine could work. And I will just take a quick second to remind you all out there that if you do enjoy the videos that we put out, including Fire Emblem Heroes content, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like down below if you did like this video, and leaving a comment down below letting us know the types of content that you'd like to see going forward. So when considering a weapon refine for Brave Camilla, I think there are three priorities that have to be hit in order for me to consider this a fully and completely successful refine, like a refine that I am over the moon with. I love it. I think they could do no wrong. They basically won the jackpot as far as working through the refine and making it the best that it can be. So priority number one for me is future-proofing. So what do I mean by future-proofing? I guess it's in the name, but essentially what that means is that the weapon refine has some innate ability or utility that allows it to be forever useful. I mean, irrespective of stats and power creep and changes to the quote-unquote meta, damage reduction meta, not damage reduction meta, non-healing meta, whatever, Cavalines, whatever it is, future-proofing means there's going to be some innate value to the weapon that's more or less never going to get old. Or even if it does get old, it's still going to be useful. Arguably, gravity, that effect of gravity is pretty future-proof. I mean, gravity is always going to be useful going forward to some extent. Even if they introduce counters to gravity, it's not as though having gravity is not going to be useful in a map. It's always going to have some level of use. So I think future-proofing is my top priority just because what that means is as they introduce new abilities and new skills and new inheritance options, new options for limit breaking and dragon flowers and everything else, despite whatever changes they make, if there's some innate value to the skill, you can always supplement stats. That's why, the future-proofing element is usually something that is a utility-based option. Priority number two for me is uniqueness. So if it's kind of hand in hand with future-proofing, but if she does something that nobody else does, or is exceptionally rare, that adds to the future-proofing, but also just adds to her overall appeal as a unique unit. She has the niche of doing some specific thing out there. So something that's unique to her or a subset of units out there, whether that is a specific kind of buff, or if it's a specific kind of debuff, if she has some ability that's normally locked against flyers that they normally don't have access to, things like that. That kind of adds to the unique appeal. And then the third thing is stat boosts, right? Big numbers, big hunk of numbers. Everybody likes to see big numbers. I'm not the biggest, again, this is the lowest priority for me. I think she does need to have boosts to her stats. Naturally, I think that's just a given when you talk about a weapon refine in the future. They're going to pile on at least some stats, but that's the lowest priority for me. Bar none, it's the least important thing, I think, as far as a unit should be considered, because the numbers always go up, and the ways to increase numbers for your character also always go up. It's the other things that are the most important. So in order to decide what direction we want Sanngridr to go in, we need to take a look at what it does right now, right? So taking a look right here, Sanngridr, 14 might. Foe cannot counterattack, so it has its own dazzling effect built into it. If the unit initiates combat, grants attack speed +3 during combat. So basically it has a light Swift Sparrow component to it. If she is attacking, player facing, she gets a little attack boost and a little speed boost. After combat, if unit attacked, inflicts gravity on target and foes within one space of target. Gravity, of course, restricts target's movement to one space through its next action. So in reviewing the weapon, we can see that it has, again, the soft, swift sparrow associated with it. I think it's a natural pick to increase that to +5 or +6, maybe even +7 if we're pushing it. Again, like I said, stat's not the most important thing to me, but I do think that it warrants a buff, especially considering the more recent staff users that we've gotten introduced into the game. I think +5, 6, 7 is not asking for too much. If I had to land on a point, the mid makes the most sense, +6. If they are able to get +6 to attack and speed as part of her player phasing capability, I think that's totally fine. So the next component to the weapon is the gravity debuff. It's great. It's been in the game since day one, and it's still potent. Being able to reduce and negate the mobility of a unit, it's very, very powerful. But again, it's been in the game since day one. I think it could use a little bit of an upgrade, and what better way to introduce an upgrade to the gravity effect than with Brave Camilla and a Choose Your Legends Refine, right? So thinking about Gravity ++, or whatever you would want to name it, how could they upgrade Gravity? So one way they could approach an enhancement to Gravity would be to increase the range. So instead of it being one space away from the unit, it could be 2 spaces away from the unit. Now that is huge. That's actually really, really substantial. That's an enormous upgrade. Not only is it 2 spaces vertically and horizontally from the unit, but also hitting the corners around the unit. I mean, that's just really huge. And that would make Gravity so amazing. That alone would be an absolutely fantastic upgrade to the weapon. But I'm not done yet. If we're shooting for the moon, another thing that I would like a gravity enhancement to do is limit the enemy's ability to teleport. So when I say teleport, what I mean by that is any Wings of Mercy effect, any Brave Edelgard effect that can teleport, any formation effects where they can teleport to adjacent allies, stuff like that. If you're able to reduce and eliminate a unit's ability to teleport, that's absolutely huge. Of course, that would also be huge for rival domains, because that would limit the enemy's ability to teleport to different fortresses. That's, of course, just an aside or whatever. But just in general, if the super gravity effect or whatever it might be, reduce the enemy's ability to teleport across the map or even to an adjacent ally, I think that would be enormous as well. I think that would be absolutely fantastic upgrade to Gravity. And yes, I know I'm pushing it, but maybe even the save skills. If they were going to move more than one space, limit it so that the save skill only applies to allies within one space. So a combination of those two things would be absolutely an amazing upgrade to Gravity, and sort of bring it to the forefront again as this just enormous threat. Now going back to the beginning of the weapon, foe cannot counterattack. I didn't forget the Dazzle component to the weapon. What would be pretty amazing, and again, I'm being greedy here because this is my wish list. What would be amazing if they added the Razzle part of the Razzle Dazzle to the Sanngridr. So if they put both components of foe cannot counterattack and the weapon does normal damage against an enemy, that frees up the B slot for Brave Camilla to use for whatever purpose. Right now, the issue with healers is that they have to reserve that B slot for either the Razzle or the Dazzle, depending on what is built into their weapon, or how their weapon is refined. So because of that, if they're able to incorporate that into Sanngridr, that frees up her ability to essentially use a plethora of different B-slot skills, including Kanto. And it would be oh so brilliant to be able to run Kanto on her B-slot while having the Razzle Dazzle effect built into the weapon. So you could do it that way. Alternatively, you could just tack Kanto on to the weapon instead and let the B-slot be used for the Wrathful effect, right? So I guess that's a long way of saying I think Brave Camilla would really benefit from having the ability to run Kanto while still doing maximized damage. I think that would be amazing. I think that's a beautiful addition. They've been pushing Kanto a lot lately. Kanto is just a natural pick for her. Lets her do more hit-and-run tactics. With the gravity as well, will just limit the mobility of the enemy. I mean, it's just chef's kiss combination as far as overall utility and mobility and being an asset on the team. Again, I know I'm being super greedy here, but that's what the wish list is for. It's to be super greedy. But okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's say that they don't want to give her Kanto or the ability to run Kanto and do full damage. Maybe, they think it's too much. I hear you. Okay. what if then they gave her the ability to grant a flyer-based buff to her allies that was mobility-based? So let's say something like an orders, or having a Kanto, or extending a Kanto to somebody else. That would be amazing as a start of turn buff for flyers. You can still limit it essentially to the movement types where Kanto is relevant, so flyers and cavalry, but essentially all that does is it grants a buff to your allies for one turn that allows them to utilize a trace skill. I mean, I think that would be fantastic. And even so, it doesn't have the innate debuff that's associated with the trace skill. So you're not getting like a full trace skill, if that's what they're worried about. You're just getting the mobility side of things, which admittedly is the most important component. But that'd be pretty fantastic, right? Now, since we're already asking for everything that I don't expect to get, but another cool idea that I thought would be really neat, because we've had the Age of Damage Reduction, right? And then we had the Age of Damage Reduction Nullification. In fact, we had the Age of Damage Reduction to the point where there was, in fact, a flying Cleric, Flame, that granted an area of effect damage reduction to her allies. What would be very interesting for a more offensive-oriented unit, or an offensive-oriented Cleric, would be to have an enemy weakening debuff. So rather than it be damage reduction, it would be damage amplification by a percentage. So you'd have to balance it, and I haven't done the math, so I don't know what a favorable percentage would be that would be, appropriate. I mean, we already kind of have pseudo moonbows built into weapons. We have true damage stacked on built into weapons. I honestly don't really see this being that absurd, and I feel like we are eventually going to see something like it anyway, so what better place to introduce it than Brave Camilla? Now, I was thinking about it in the context of a within two spaces debuff, like an in-combat debuff, but it could also be an activated debuff, and it could be activated in the same way that the gravity is. So as soon as she inflicts the gravity on an enemy, enemies within two spaces will get this new activated debuff on them, this new penalty on them that would essentially be a weakening effect where they take 20-30% more damage. I think that'd be pretty cool. Again, I think something like it's coming, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see it eventually. Would love to see it introduced here. Now, another thing I would love to see with Brave Camilla, and it's not specifically a weapon refine, so maybe I shouldn't mention it here, but with Choose Your Legends 5, they of course introduced unique skills for the runner-ups. So my hope is that they would take and revisit the older runner-ups and maybe give them a unique skill as well. And in the instance of Brave Camilla, if it's not going to be something like a Kanto for the B slot or something like that, what I would like to see is for her to have the very first offensive, damaging special for a healer. It's been 5 years, and we still don't have an offensive-oriented special in the game for clerics. Which is kind of absurd. I mean, I guess it's for balancing reasons, is what they were thinking, but I mean, they could balance it out in some way. That means that there's special art that's never being utilized. There are special quotes, like offensive special quotes, that have been recorded and never gets used in battle, because there's just no attack that will activate it, which is just, it's pretty absurd, right? When you think about it. They paid for the actors to record these lines. Anyway, my point being, I think with Camilla being this offensive, ranged flying cleric, it would be a perfect way to introduce the cleric special. I would prefer it to be a unique special to her, because again, I'm all about having the unique utility, but even if it were just the introduction of one, I think that'd be pretty great too. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. You could have an offensive special that heals yourself, like something similar to a soul. Or it could be something that's, more damaging. Maybe it takes into account how much you would ordinarily heal the enemy based upon the HP calculation, and then do that as additional damage, something like that. There's all kinds of ways that you could integrate an actual cleric special that can do damage. So I think that would be fantastic. Again, those are my pie-in-the-sky wishes, but those are things that I think that would be really, really cool to see with a refine. Now, bringing it back down to Earth and things that we're probably more likely to see, I'm going to list off a bunch of things that we've seen that clerics have had in the past year or so that have been introduced into the game. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some elements of these introduced into Camilla's Refine. So, for example, an AoE recover skill. So basically, just an area of effect around Camilla at the start of a turn to heal or even just negate the penalties on her allies. That's something that we see more often. That's actually built into a C-slot skill. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that's something that we actually see in her Refine as well. Isolation. Isolation has been around for a while now. There's still only a limited number of units that can actually utilize and inflict Isolation. It's a pretty debilitating ability. So, you know, they could have this integrated in some capacity in her staff, and it would be a welcome addition because Isolation is pretty useful. AoE damage reduction. So I was talking about Flame earlier and how you can stack on that damage reduction, and it's pretty silly. Again, they introduced damage reduction nullification as a counter to it, but that doesn't completely negate the value of having damage reduction. That just means you have to be more careful instead of just going ooga booga, I'm just going to toss a bunch of damage reduction units together and nullify all the damage incoming. You just have to think a little bit more, that's what balance is supposed to be. And the next one is kind of an odd one. I didn't really know where to put it. I could see this being introduced just because Intelligent Systems loves to get convoluted with having a counter to a counter that was designed to counter a counter, right? So I could foresee a nullify null C disrupt ability in the future. Basically nullifying the ability to nullify counterattacks. So if somebody has null C disrupt, that would just straight up nullify their ability and would reactivate the dazzling effect, for example, for Sanngridr, something like that. I'm just going to toss it out there because that's something that I foresee that happening at some point potentially, and of course it would be a nice asset. It would be something that would be pretty nice to have unique on Camilla. Again, I'm all about the uniqueness and the future proofing and everything else, so that'd be pretty cool, I think, to see. Or even still nullifying the preventing of follow-up attacks, like nullifying Wary Fighter and things like that. That'd be really valuable for her, just because she's going to have some great innate speed and natural doubling ability, so allowing her to do what she does best would be fantastic. So yeah, those were my rambling initial thoughts and wish list as far as the Refine for Brave Camilla. I definitely don't think we're going to get all of these. This is like, again, what I would love to see, but I know isn't going to happen. If we just get bits and pieces of these, it would be fantastic. And I guess, you know, I'll be surprised along with all of you as far as what gets revealed for her. We'll probably put out a reaction video and an analysis video once that actually drops. But yeah, a lot of people were asking for my thoughts on this, and you know, I've been ruminating and thinking about it, and this is kind of like what I came up with roughly. Let me know in the comments below what ideas you have for a potential Brave Camilla Refine, or any of that Choose Your Legends batch. If you're looking forward to the refines for that batch, that's, again, probably going to be coming in the next month or so. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to leave us a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more Fire Emblem Heroes content. We thank you all so much for watching and for taking time out of your day to spend with us. We really do appreciate it. Certainly hoping you're all staying safe, healthy, secure, and united out there, and wishing the very, very best for you, your family, and your friends. And until next time, let's protect those skies.